Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. The division championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Hello and welcome to Access to Democracy. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill Raker, your host for this edition of the program. You know, one would think, given the title of our program, Access to Democracy, that we mostly focus on politics and politicians and government officials and things of that nature. But those of you who are regular viewers of Access to Democracy know that we have a much more eclectic guest list that we invite onto the program. And today we have a guest that we're delighted to welcome. It's Peachy Galindez, who is a former TV and broadcast communicator. Peachy, welcome to Access to Democracy.
Thank you, Bill, for having me.
I'm very anxious to hear your story. I think you have a really interesting perspective and set of experiences to bring to the program and share with our viewers. So let's start by you telling us a little bit of your background, your family history, you know, where you grew up, where you went to school, what some of your interests were, and then we'll get into some of the specifics of your careers.
All right. Well, if you're familiar with Philippine culture, if you hear my name, Peachy, you would know that I was born and raised in the Philippines because we're fans of fun nicknames, and we carry it on till adulthood and through our professional lives. So I was born and raised in the capital, in Metro Manila, and I moved to the United States when I was a young mom with my 2-year-old and my husband 18 years ago. Okay. And before that, I worked in broadcasting. I worked in both radio and TV. I was a DJ in an FM station, started off as a newscaster, and then I worked in TV. I started off as a weather girl and moved up to being a news anchor, and that's what I also exactly studied. And I've, in the span of how many years, I've moved from countries, and then I moved to 3 states, all very different places. So New York City, rural Tennessee, and hopefully my forever home, Minnesota.
Your forever home is Minnesota. Well,
yes.
We're delighted that you made it to our fine state and that you've decided that this is where you want to stay for a while. An interesting background. What got you started or interested in going into a broadcasting career?
Well, ever since I was little, I was known as like this tiny kid with a big booming voice, so much that when I was in kindergarten, if they didn't have a microphone, they would call me to make the assembly announcements. And I guess it kind of started from there. And then when I was going to pick what I wanted to study in university, I, interestingly enough, picked my choice with my weakness instead of my strength. So I really hated math. And I thought that what could I study that didn't have a lot of math? And the answer was broadcasting.
Okay.
So that's what I studied in the University of the Philippines. They had a wonderful program. So I did all 4 years of undergrads with film majors, journalism majors, and broadcast communication majors. So that's kind of how I got my official start to being in broadcasting.
Well, you started out by telling us about some of the different positions or roles you had in broadcasting, and maybe you can share a little bit more detail about each one of those. So first you were a DJ on an FM station?
On an FM station.
What kind of music did you DJ?
Top 40. So if you remember Rick D's Top 40,
Oh, yes.
the format
yeah, the West
was,
Coast guy.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, it was
right.
very similar to that. And interestingly enough, too, in the Philippines, we follow a very American format. So our inspiration really are the American radio stations in New York and the West Coast. So Z100, the Rick D Show. So that's what I did for a couple of years when I was in the Philippines. And that's actually how I got my start in broadcasting. You do the round of auditions usually, and I was not planning to be on the radio. What I wanted to be was on TV.
On the camera.
Yes.
Yeah.
So E-Philippines, like the entertainment channel in America, was starting the network in the Philippines. And it was a time when video jockeys were a thing, if you remember.
The VJs,
Yes,
yeah,
the
right,
VJs. So
right.
I auditioned for MTV, for E, and the same company that was going to start E had a radio station. So I guess I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't make it as a video jock. But then they asked me if I wanted to be on radio. And I said yes, and that's how I got my start.
That was the breakthrough.
Yes, that
you
was the
got.
breakthrough.
So I have to ask, Peachy, was the top 40 that you played there the same top 40 that we would have here in the United States?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So that was the time boy bands and Britney Spears. So we really followed what was being played in the United States, in the Philippines. And I feel like if you turned on the radio, you probably couldn't really tell the difference if you were listening to an American radio station or a Filipino radio station. Although we did play a little bit of Filipino artists, like a speckle of it, but mostly it was really American top 40 stuff that we played.
And then the next role was as a weather forecaster?
So while
you said weather girl.
Weather
right?
girl,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So while I was working in radio, I worked in the morning, just the drive time hours, and the shifts in the Philippines were pretty short, like 3 hours. So then I had the rest of the day to do something else, like side projects, and so I decided I should try it out still again on TV, and I was able to get a job in the state-owned television network, and I started off doing the weather with the green screen, but the weather in the Philippines is can be exciting when there's a hurricane, but mostly it's everyday chance of rain. So it was my job to tell it in an interesting way every single day.
Did you have a favorite tagline or phrase that you used that kind of distinguished you from the other?
Oh, you always have to have like
Right?
that ending tagline. So in the radio station, we spoke in English. And in the TV network, it was quite formal Filipino. So my tagline translated into whether it rains or whether it's dry, take care always. But in Filipino.
Okay.
Because you always have to have that tagline at the end.
So weather forecasting or broadcasting maybe is a little bit different here than in the Philippines because of the weather or because of the format and the way they do it?
The format would probably be the same, but the weather occurrences are definitely much different.
Sure. You don't have any snow forecasts.
No,
or
not
anything
at
like
all,
that, right?
not at all.
But hurricanes, I guess. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would be peak season for my reports.
So now you're the weather girl. What's your next step?
Eventually, they would ask me to do news anchoring if the news anchor wasn't around when I was a junior broadcaster. And eventually, I got my own afternoon news report, so I anchored that. So I moved up to being anchor while still being weather girl to the evening news.
So what would be some of the differences between being an anchor on the TV station there in the Philippines and being an anchor on a program here in Minneapolis?
You know, that's a challenging question to answer because I've never really had the opportunity to be in broadcasting here. But as an observer and just looking at the broadcasting industry as a whole for the US and the Philippines, I would say there's probably a lot more opportunities and openings for young broadcasters in the United States. In the Philippines, it's very limited because there's only a few radio stations, a few TV stations, although it's such a big market because it's such a densely populated area. Whereas here you have the big networks and it trickles down to the local networks. And you have community TV, which is really great. So I think there's a lot more opportunity for young broadcasters in the United States.
A difference in opportunity, difference in magnitude of the opportunities that are available. So news anchor, but you didn't spend all of your time behind the desk. You had some field experiences, true?
Yes,
right?
a bit, yes.
Tell us about some of those. I know if you don't bring one up, I know about it and I'll ask you, but go ahead.
Yeah, I guess one of my most core memories as far as coverage was concerned was when President George W. Bush visited the Philippines. Security was so tight, and the state-owned network, the National Broadcasting Network, was the only station that could cover it. And I was very privileged and feel very lucky that I was invited to be part of the small team to cover his visit because it was such a big deal. So I specifically covered the landing of Air Force One, and I thought it would be quick and easy, but I realized that it takes quite a long time for the plane to land and for the president to get out. So there was a lot of ad-libbing involved during that time, but my radio skills came into play because in radio, you cannot have any dead air because you have no visuals. So that's a time when both my skills in radio and TV worked well together, and we did a pretty good broadcast for the president.
So you did a lot of color commentary to fill in the time, right? What was the most thrilling thing about being able to be a part of that team that greeted President Bush?
It was really momentous. It was just special. So it's a core broadcasting memory of mine, and just to have access to like the footage, it was very limited. So I was very thrilled that I was in the place where I was during that time.
Was there an opportunity to ask the president a question?
No.
for you or any of the other members of the crew? No.
Oh, yes. So the more senior reporters were able to go to Malacanang Palace. So that's where the president of the Philippines lived. And during that time, it was Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. And they had a banquet there. So the Malacanang Palace correspondent was able to be up close to President George W. Bush.
Well, that sounds fascinating. I'm impressed that you had the opportunity to do that, Peachy.
Thank you.
So, and that was the situation I was going to ask you about, so thank you for bringing it up. Were there other situations and instances that are memorable to you because of their uniqueness, or maybe it was a huge challenge or something that you had to deal with?
You know, on the flip side, when my radio career had like equally thrilling moments, but very different because you deal with artists and athletes. So even if it's fleeting, I was able to meet artists from that eventually became worldwide phenomenons. And our radio station was also the official F1 station. I wasn't a big F1 fan, but it was pretty thrilling meeting somebody like Fernando Alonso. Because he would visit the station since we were the official F1 station. And sometimes artists would test out their music in Asia. So before they become big, they visit the Philippines, have concerts, and actually visit the radio stations. and we kind of do a guessing game on who's going to be big or not. Like before NSYNC and Justin Timberlake became worldwide phenomena in the beginning of the United States, they visited Asia and did the rounds of the radio station, which they probably wouldn't have done if they were the NSYNC they were after like a year that happened. So it's very thrilling, and also like just guessing who among these artists will be very big in the future, and it's just an honor to be able to have met them, even in a fleeting manner.
I don't think a lot of people here in the United States know what you just talked about and what you explained about artists getting started and getting developed in Asia, the Philippines specifically, before they break into the European or the American market. And you named some of the artists. Did you get to interview or chat with any of those when you were on the air?
Yes. So some of them didn't make it quite as big as NSYNC, but I remember interviewing like a boy band from Texas, Plus One, and then there's the artist that sang a song for the TV show Dawson's Creek. So I interviewed her, Lee Nash from Sixpence None the Richer. So they became big in America because they had the song put in a soundtrack of a TV show that became a big hit in the United States.
Fascinating, really fascinating. Which is what I expected this interview to be, Peachy, when I asked you to come on the program to talk with us about these experiences that are unique to us, for you to tell us about them. So after being a news anchor, were there other roles that you had in broadcasting while you were still in the Philippines?
There's a lot of other opportunities outside broadcasting if you are in that field. I did voiceover work as well, and that's pretty typical in the Philippines. So I think that would probably be a big difference, because I think voiceover work in the United States is probably more for more creative theater people, or I'm not really sure if I'm getting that right, but I did voiceover work for commercials, and I was like a baby elephant in a diaper commercial, just my voice. From that to having, giving out your daily horoscope on your cell phone as an old fortune teller. So I've done quite a bit of interesting voiceover work.
You certainly have. So with that as a career, multiple careers, sort of, in the Philippines, what was the motivation for you to come to the United States? How did that come about? Can you share that?
Well, we had a young family, and my husband is a physician, and he had his residency in New York City. So that's what motivated us to move to the United States.
Well, that's a pretty big motivation.
Yes.
Yeah. So how long did you live in New York?
We lived there for 3 to 4 years. And then from there, we lived in a small town in Tennessee, which I also loved. And then we moved here to Minnesota.
And those moves were related to your husband's medical career?
Yes, they were. Yeah. And then we chose Minnesota because I would always read up on Minnesota. There would always be a couple of small towns or suburban pockets that were always in the best places to live. So it really piqued our interest. Yeah, and we weren't afraid of the snow.
Okay, so you learned to love the snow,
Yes,
right?
yes, we do.
What are some of the other things that you enjoy and appreciate about living in Minnesota now?
Well, I love the change of the seasons, because in the Philippines, we only had 2 seasons, the dry and the wet season. And as a weather girl, I was very familiar with that. So it's really beautiful to see the change of seasons in Minnesota. We love it here.
Do you get back to the Philippines often?
I haven't been in a while, but we do have family who visit us often.
Okay.
So that's a big plus, that they come and visit.
So have you had some opportunities to use your broadcasting skills and experiences here in the United States?
I haven't in the past 15 years that we were here, but the last 3 years I was able to do something creative, not exactly broadcasting, but I started writing, because in a radio station I was the main writer. So I wrote a story and I read it in a show that's called Listen to Your Mother. It's produced by Twin Cities Creative. It is a live storytelling event where a couple of women share their motherhood stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, the funny, the sad. And I was able to be part of that community. And I've done 3 shows so far, 2 to read my story and 1 to host it.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
It is.
Can you tell us a little bit about the story you wrote and shared on that program?
Yeah, so my first story was about letting go of your child as they head off to college. And then I did a holiday show where I shared about how Filipino and American Christmas traditions merge in our home. So they do a spring show after Mother's Day, and they also do a holiday show.
And this is broadcast? This is a program that's on the air?
It is not, but it is in a theater in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And people come get tickets, and they have a very loyal following that the shows always get sold out even way before the show is on.
So what theater is it in?
It's at the Riverview Theater, the historic
Theater.
Riverview Theater in Minneapolis.
And it's what stories your mother?
Listening
to your
mother.
mother's.
Yes, listen to your mother.
That's
And I know a couple of other places across the United States also do this show. Yeah, so it's a very good concept.
Do you have some projects related to that are in development that will be coming out in the future?
I don't have any yet, but it is a continuous community, and when they do reunion shows or the holiday shows, they invite the alumni, the Listen to Your Mother alumni, to write stories, and if they want to do that show for that season, they could. So I'm very open to doing it again.
So what's the audience? Is it younger people, or is it, the adult population that is the audience for this theater group?
I think it's pretty much maybe my generation.
Okay.
And then a speckle of younger ones, yes.
And how long has this program been in existence?
I
know?
think they've been doing it for more than 10 years now. I'm not really sure, but it's been around for a while. And when I did it, I was invited by a friend to do it. I actually have not heard of it, but it has a very loyal following.
Well, it sounds like it would be
Yes.
a program that people would want to hear the stories that you can tell on a program like that.
Yes.
Right? So what motivated you to do that, to get involved with that program?
Well, we had a group of moms that were egging each other to audition together, and in the end, only I made a story. And then somebody else did it. So there was only 2 of us, and then they cast me in the show, and it just all started from there.
What have been some of the more influential people and experiences that you've had in your life?
I would always say family. Like my family back home in the Philippines, I have 2 siblings, and then my mom and my dad, and we're pretty tight-knit. I led a very sheltered life, even though I grew up in the chaos of Metro Manila. And I would say they've always been my inspiration. And now that I have my own family, it's my husband and my 3 kids, and my 3 kids are even much more creative and well-spoken than I am. So I'm excited to see what's headed in the future for them.
Well, Peachy, I don't know if our viewers, some of our viewers may remember this, but a few months ago, we had your son on the program.
Yes, Lorenzo.
Yeah, Lorenzo, who he and his team were one of the winners in the Future City competition,
Yes.
right? So tell us a little bit more, if you would like, about the children that you have and what their interests are and what they're doing.
All right. So I have Malaya. She's a junior in the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. And she's a pre-med student, and her creative output is having a minor in comedy performance. So she's studying to go to med school, but at the same time wants to pursue comedy. And she plays the piano, so she's still studying piano at USC. My middle child, Nina, she's into theater. She's a junior here in Minnesota. And they just finished a production of Les Mis. She was Madame Thénardier, so a very exciting role. And she's into speech and singing and also playing instruments. And then we have Lorenzo, who does Future City, and he's excited to try the speech team for the first time in 8th grade this year. So that's his creative input.
What wonderful stories that we're able to hear from you about you and your family and their interests and their achievements. I mean, it must be really exciting around your household to have all of these activities going on with your children.
It's definitely a buzz of activity. We're very busy.
So, what do you think about your future? Do you have any aspirations that you're thinking about or working on that might be related to some of the things that you have experience with?
You know, my goal is just pretty simple, just for my children to be happy, healthy humans. But I guess if I could in the future have a creative project with any of them, I think that would be a good, exciting goal for us.
So are you thinking about making the initiative, or you're looking for one of your children to maybe make the initiative and saying, hey, Mom, come on, let's do this together?
There has been talk about a podcast that bridges generations, but it's just in the idea stage. So maybe something in that theme.
Well, podcasts are pretty popular right now. Absolutely. Or YouTubers. You ever think about being a YouTuber?
Oh, I don't know. It's too much work.
Well, Peachy, we have a couple of minutes left in our time together here today. This has been just a really interesting interview to have you talk to us about some things that you've had the privilege of experiencing in your life that most of the rest of us never will. And so it's great to be able to have you share those with us. Any final thoughts or comments or perspectives that you'd like to share with our viewers here in Minnesota and around the world?
Well, I don't know, maybe a little piece of advice.
Yes.
Just I remember one of the best pieces of advice I got from a broadcasting boss was KISS, which means keep it simple, stupid.
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah, so my just rule of thumb is just be happy with your now. And if you're not, change it. Because you have the power to.
And often, you know, each of us personally have a greater ability to change things than we realize.
Yes, that's true.
And, you know, we're reluctant to take on that responsibility and that accountability to say, you know, it's up to me to make this a better situation and a better place.
True.
Peachy, it's been a delight to have you with us. And whatever it is that you choose to do, we wish you every success. And this live theater thing that you're in, I'm hoping that what you shared with us will motivate some of our viewers to maybe get interested. Maybe they can participate, or in the audience at least, right? So if they wanted to get information about the theater, is there a website or someplace?
Yes, so check out Twin Cities Creative. You can look for it on the internet. And there's actually audition process going on very soon. And if you want more details on that, you could check out Twin Cities Creative.
That's a great message to leave our audience with. Thank you for being a guest on Access to Democracy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching Access to Democracy. It's been great having you as our audience today. There's more Access to Democracy at accesstodemocracy.com.